When I first started my Alocasia and Aroid journey, I basically started out by just reading and just trying to learn everything that I could. But from the internet, I found some mixing messages on what I should always do and I should never do, what was right and what was wrong. But now that I have over 60 different types of Alocasia, I decided to make a list of the 5 things I always do regardless of what Alocasia I have. Hey, Pablo from Aroid Vibes Only, and if keeping Alocasia is your thing, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. So this video, I am going to go just down the top 5 things that I think are the most important that you should do. So the first thing that I recommend everybody to do, to the point of if you're not going to do this, like now it's your recipe. Like I feel like nothing else I say will matter because everything that I do hinges on this. And that is going to be to always use a reservoir and some kind of container that goes above it. So if you're trying to just grow your Alocasia just sitting in a tiny little plate, like a terracotta plate and terracotta pot, I am so sorry, but you will fail. There is just no way that I believe that you will be able to succeed in keeping that plant alive if you are not on it like every single day. Because the way it works is water it, it comes down, it goes to a little tray, a little plate, and then it just gets reabsorbed within like a few hours or evaporates. And then the plant, the rest of the plant, is going to go through a drying out process that is going to be very unequal. So the top part is going to dry out first, the bottom part, not as much. So the most important things to have whenever you want to solve that is a container, a self-watering pot, and some kind of wick that you can use to connect the two and make sure that there's always moisture going into the container. Like I much rather you only water through the reservoir, like just fill up the reservoir, drop the plant with the wick, over you top watering a plant that has no reservoir and no. I recommend you use a synthetic fiber. Please do not use cotton, do not use any kind of natural fiber. So what's going to happen is it's going to rot, it's going to get gross, it's going to grow mold. So just get a 100% synthetic wick and you should be just fine. So I believe in reservoirs so much that it doesn't matter whether it is a tiny little corm, whether it is a plant that is just starting, or you're ready for the big container and the big reservoir. Trust me, I will be using a wick, I will be using a reservoir, and I will be using some type of self-watering pot. So please, if you're going to want to have your Alocasias thriving, do that. If you don't do it, now that's your recipe, not mine. A big thing that Alocasias get complaints over and over again is pests. They are known to be this humongous, magical, just magnet to spider mites and thrips, and you'll have people just have these horror stories on how their entire collection got gobbled up by spider mites that they were not paying enough attention. But let me in on a secret. Let me tell you a thing. That's your fault. I'm sorry, you had an outbreak, that's your fault. Things don't just magically appear. Bugs don't just come from thin air. They have to come from somewhere. And if you're letting them into your collection, that's on you, boo, because I can tell you I have not had one single outbreak in my entire collection indoors in the 2 years that I've had it, ever since I brought everything indoor and I started to do the following. So the second thing that I always do with all of my Alocasias and honestly all of my plants is quarantine. Like, you'll know this. We went through the same pandemic in 2020 and we learned this word. What does it mean? It means you keep the thing you're not too sure about away from the other stuff. If you're the kind of person that just grabs the plant and is like, oh, from Home Depot, and then you're like, blup, here's my plant from Home Depot next to all my plants. No, wrong. You're just asking for your entire collection to get destroyed. Let's not do that. Let's be smart about it. So what you need to do is quarantine all new plants that come into your house. I don't care if they come from your mom's house. I don't care if they come from Home Depot, from your neighbors. You're going to put that plant in a separate space. Now, if you're really fancy schmancy, you might have like a quarantine tent and you might keep it really cute. But let me tell you, my quarantine tent is my spare bathroom. Straight up. Any plant that I get is going straight into my quarantine room, aka my second bathroom, for a few days. I don't just leave it there like 3 minutes. I don't just leave it there like overnight. No, like I'm gonna be leaving it there for a while, like at least 2 to 3 days. I'm gonna make sure there's some kind of light. You're not living in the pitch black. You're not gonna just dry it out or put it through stress, right? You're gonna treat it just like you would any plant, just away from the others. Like if you're like, I don't have a light bulb, I don't have this, I don't just, it's fine. Like I'd much rather your plant not getting any light for 48 hours or just getting like artificial, some bathroom light over you completely destroying the rest of your collection. So fine, you just agreed to now quarantine all of your plants. But what happens? Do you just leave it there by itself and then hope for the best? No, you're going to treat. So if you're outside the US, I'm sorry, I'm not really sure how to help you because you need to figure this one out on your own. But if you're in the US, there's two things you should always be using for your plants. And that is Captain Jack's insecticidal super soap. So what you're going to do is you're going to yank your plant, put it in your bathroom, and you're going to spray everything in this. You're going to spray, you'll let it sit for a few minutes, then you bring your good old rag, and then you're going to wipe it down the leaves. Then you're going to wait. And then the next day, you're doing this again. And what we want to make sure is that we leave this spinosad. What we want to do is to leave this spinosad, which is a bacteria, to sit there. If there's anything in it, it's going to get in, kill it, and it's going to leave a residue on the leaf. So what you want to do the next day is spray it again. And then you're going to repeat that. I basically do it 2-3 times. Like I said, I leave it there 48, 72 hours. And then after that time, I take a look. And if the plant looks fine, I don't see anything moving, then it goes. Most of my plants are not coming in with the soil. So if you're bringing in the soil, you also bring in all the potential pathogens that are there. Many times you're going to have stuff just in the soil, like aphids have a 4-week cycle that involves them going into the inside the leaf and also into the ground. So you need to like be spraying this literally for 4 weeks if you want to get rid of your aphids. But it is really important you also look at the soil, like what kind of soil is it? If you're thinking of repotting, if you're thinking of transplanting it to a different thing, I recommend you don't do it in the middle of the entire like plant room. Like just go to a separate spot where you can control the dirt, what happens to it, because you're gonna have spores, you're gonna have eggs, you're gonna have like gnats. Like all this stuff could be in the substrate of the plant you just bought. So you need to make sure that A, you quarantine, 2, you treat and you do preventatives in case anything happens, and 3, then you bring it into your collection. And if you do that, I will almost guarantee that you will stop having those outbreaks, you will stop having spider mites, you will stop having all of these pests that are just like destroying your collection. Because again, they do not just magically appear out of thin air, they have to be coming from somewhere. And most likely they're coming from other plants that you're bringing in. Also, if you always do tissue culture or you do a lot of tissue culture like I do, that really helps out because a lot of the plants that you're growing came in sterile, right? They did not come with anything else in there. They had no soil. So you're able to keep this sterile plant from the beginning all the way through. The third thing that I think you should do every time if you want your Alocasias to live and succeed, and now when I mean every time, I don't mean every time you buy it, I mean every single time, is add nutrients to the water. Alocasias are hungry plants because they come from places where either you live or you die, either you grow fast or you get gobbled up. So these plants are just sucking in all the nutrients that they can and growing as fast as possible to outcompete the rest. But when we are in our home, we're basically limited to what kind of nutrients they can get based on what we give them. So if you're purchasing a plant from like Home Depot or something like that and you leave it in the soil, many times it is going to have some kind of slow release fertilizer already in it, but eventually that will stop being as efficient. And then completely opposite, if you're doing semi-hydro, all of your stuff does not have any available nutrients, so you need to add them. Now, some people recommend you watering or maybe putting nutrients like once a month, once per what? No, I think you should be putting nutrients into your plant every single time. But it is very important for you to distinguish between nutrients because not all nutrients are made equal. And what really is going to depend is going to be on what kind of substrate you have your plant in and also what is your end goal with that plant. So there's going to be a difference between a liquid type of fertilizer and a granule type of fertilizer. While something like a liquid nutrient or like a liquid fertilizer, usually it says here like whether or not you can use for hydroponics, but usually those will be a lot easier and more readily available because the plant's not able to break down the chemical. It needs to be already in a bioactive, like readily available type of molecule, so the plant is able to absorb all those nutrients a lot faster. But something like a granule, this hinge, like the fulcrum and this working is going to be bacteria. So you need to have all the extra goody, microbiome that comes with plants. Again, plants are not dead. There are entire ecosystems within its soil. So usually these will require some kind of organism to kind of consume it and help break down and modify the form of this slow release fertilizer into something the plant can actually take. So you cannot just grab these granules and like pour them over like your container with leca and then just be like, oh, it's gonna be fine. That's just nutrient. It's not gonna work like that because the plant's not able to absorb all types of nutrients depending on their form, depending on how they're structured is how they can absorb. So me myself, I have 3 different fertilizers that I cycle through. Fertilizer cycling is also very important because think about it, not all fertilizers are made equal. They have different substance types in them. They have different amounts, percentages. So if you use the same fertilizer over and over and over and over and over, eventually you may create a buildup or a deficiency. Say if you have fertilizer that's really high in something like calcium, but it has really low magnesium, right? Those are kind of chemicals that need to play together and need to play nice. What you end up is creating a deficiency in your plant because it ends up with too much of one, not enough of the other. So it is really recommended that you cycle through different fertilizer at least every 6 months. Personally, I cycle through them every single watering because I can. So what I do is I fill up my 5-gallon container with a little automatic kind of spigot, and then I just add a different kind of nutrient. So sometimes I'm going to be using the Tezula brand. Right now I'm using the Key-Lite formula, which has less potassium, and it has more of the other kind of nutrients that I think my plants needed. Then I cycle that also through with Super Thrive. However, I ran into a lot of issues only using this, and it started to get my plants to look kind of ugly. So I definitely recommend you having to mix in something else besides just using Super Thrive. And then the third one is going to be Growth Technology. You can see the bottle right there. I'm sure you're familiar with it because this is the Australian brand that a lot of big plant influencers kind of promote and use. And so do I. I have used it from the beginning. I personally don't have like a stamp seal of approval for only that. Again, I use it as part of my cycle. So I don't have it with me. I already finished it. That one tends to last a lot less. It is a much more diluted version of nutrients, so it's really low in percentage and it has a little water, so you need to add a lot of amount per container. But it is in a way, in a bioactive kind of way that is really, really optimal for the plants to absorb, and you can see how a lot of people just claim that it has helped their plants tremendously. But even if you're only using that, I definitely recommend you cycling through a few different ones. Like with the Tezula, the next one that I'm going to buy is going to be a slightly different bag, just to tackle different kind of nutrients that might be deficient in my collection. And I know I'm not trying to overwhelm you with too much of a complex stuff about nutrients, but I also want to mention that just because something is one substance, like K, potassium, it does not mean that it's the same in all of them. So for example, Tezula, which is the K-Lite formula, which has less of a potassium, this uses potassium nitrate as the type of potassium that it's using. And this silica, which you have had people that are talking about adding silica to their plants, this also has potassium. But this type of potassium is potassium silicate. So while both of these have potassium, they have a different type of potassium. So I think by mixing both types, I am able to give the plant so much more diversity on the type of potassium that it uses. I add the silica boost on the actual container every time. I'll add it maybe twice a month. And then I use one of these, every single time. Sometimes I do a flush. What that means is I grab my pot, I go under the house. And as always, don't forget that if you're using semi-hydro or anything like that and you're using nutrients, eventually you're going to get a nutrient buildup. That is whenever you get the leca balls to get this kind of like fuzzy. It's not fuzzy as in hairy, it's more like a crystallized kind of a dry salt kind of fuzzy. So what that tells you is that there's been a buildup in those salts. So you need to take your leca or your pond, whatever it is, and you need to run it down a bunch of water. So that is basically going to flush all the extra nutrients that have built up on the soil for now, and then you can start all over. So it is recommended that you flush your hydroponic plants every so often. I really don't know how. I kind of just go for it like once a year or whenever like the plant's looking a little rough. And usually I always make sure to be running it through water whenever I am cleaning like the pot or the reservoir or want to clean the roots or something like that. The next one is going to have to be airflow. So that is super important for all of your Alocasias. And I just don't mean airflow in the air. That is vital, but you should also focus on airflow in the soil root system. So one of the common reasons for an alocasia to rot is going to be because it just got waterlogged, it got too much water, it started rotting, and it just could not figure its way out. So I have learned that by giving them something like a net pot, these are intended to be for orchids, you're able to give the roots all of the ways that it can come out. So they are not just forced to just come all the way out down at the bottom. You can begin to have all of these roots come out from the side, which to me allows them to have a lot more flexibility, and it lowers the odds of them rotting. If you're not ready for a net pot and you already have a bunch of others, I recommend you get some kind of soldering iron or something along those lines, because what I then do is I just grab my usual container pot and then I just do holes all over. And as you can see, that is really, really important for it to be able to survive. So we established that circulation in the roots is vital, but the other one is going to be this. You see it moving, and that is because I have fans all around me. I have a ceiling fan that has a dual blade that is constantly pushing and moving the air around, and I have a second standing kind of floor fan that is constantly just moving the air on this kind of bottom part of the room. So I'm trying to get almost like a full sort of air circulation. Why is that important? Twofold. One, think about it. Plants are sitting out in an open, they're getting hit with the breeze, with the sun, and with all of these ambient things. So the wind is going to help make your petioles and the leaves stronger, so they're not just like flopping around. That usually means that it has not had time to strain. So think about it logically, like you have a leaf that is a little too floppy and it keeps getting smacked around by the wind. Eventually the plant builds up and it gets like in a much more sturdier way to be able to withstand kind of like that push. So if your plant never experiences any kind of movement and air breeze, then those leaves and petioles are going to be kind of floppy and kind of weak. But the second thing is Alocasias are super, super prone to guttation. Guttation is whenever a plant decides to suck up a bunch of water and then realizes that it has a little bit too much for that leaf. So it opens the pores and then water comes out of the leaf and it just drips down. That is not an issue if you have airflow, right? Because the plant, whether it's day or night, just gonna sweat, exude that moisture and then drip down, and then a little breeze will come and sway it out. But that makes it into a problem whenever you don't have any airflow, because what you end up happening is you get this clear see-through event that happens before. So I'm gonna give you an example. This is my Alocasia Baginda Silver Dragon variegated. So from the front, where am I? This leaf. From this front, this leaf looks just fine, you know, variegated. It looks just like happy, it is not mushy, it is not soft, it is not nothing. But if I turn it around, right here, you're going to see how this actual leaf is kind of see-through underneath. It's getting this, here you can have another example of, look. You see how it's a little more see-through on the side? I think the white one also had some. So I think this is the one that shows it the most. So you can see all of this wet thing here. It is not actually wet. Like when I'm touching it, it is not mushy, it is not soft.
So most of us are familiar with transpiration, which is the little openings, almost like a pore, and basically the plant will be releasing some vapor, just water, and some other byproducts like oxygen. That's how they do their thing. They have a specific structure called a hydanthode, and this is basically just an opening in the leaf. This allows all the excess water to just come out as liquid instead of vapor, which is why it's really important to have good aeration, because you have actual water that goes towards the edge of the leaf. They come out from the edge, and then they go all the way to the tip. So whenever you have water sitting there, it allows the pathogens to grow and go into the plant through that opening. So it's a double-edged sword because it helps prevent too much water and moisture being there. And
so basically they pushed out water and then it stood there. So all it does is it's gonna bring some mold, it's gonna allow bacteria to grow, and it's just going to create rot into the plant. That is sometimes why you end up with something like this. So this kind of in the middle rot, you see how it basically is like the leaf is fine except this one middle just patch. It is not like it's sick or anything like that. So what happened was I moved this plant from where it was, which was getting basically hit with the airflow all the time, and I moved it higher into a different shelf because it was getting kind of tall. So what happened instantly, this plant was like, that is not enough airflow. And while it's not root bound or anything like that, it basically started to just suck up too much water. If you see that, just add more airflow. don't like rewater, let it like breathe a little bit, like she's choked. That is even the case whenever you're dealing with semi-hydro. You're like, how can I do less water if it's sitting on a reservoir of water? You just do. Like, you just kind of let it lower a little bit. You don't rewater from the top. And then you just put a lot of airflow and you allow the plant to pull its shit together. And the final thing that I always, 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 always do with all my Alocasias, and you should too, is going to be to secure the spare. And I'm not talking just about like British monarchy, like making sure somebody can replace the head. It's literally having something to replace your plant when it dies. And I say when because ain't nothing certain when it comes down to Alocasias. Today they're thriving, tomorrow they're melted. So Alocasias multiply by creating certain clones. It creates this corms. There's a different term for like the actual lengthy part, then this is the actual corm. And these are produced from the base of the plant, and they're also pushed through like the stem area. So you can see this one is basically just halfway. So if you're a bad parent like me and you let them get too root bound, you're gonna see right there that they're going to even break through the other leaf. Like this one literally ripped 2 leaves. It ripped 1 and 2 just to go out, and they'll continue to do that to find more. So Alocasias wants to multiply any which way they can, and it's your job to help them at least once. So my advice and what I always do is I make sure to get 1 plant and I make sure to get a duplicate of that plant. And then I'm just going to hope for the best. Eventually, you're going to end up plants like my velvet that it has too many, I'm too successful, and now I have more black velvets that I know what to do with, so I kind of just throw them. You don't need to prop everything. It's fine. But for everything else, I recommend that you do a self kind of watering container with a lid and with a cute little net pot, and then just put your corm in there, and then that way you guarantee that it has a high humidity, you guarantee that it's staying moist, you guarantee that it's staying warm, and you don't cross-contaminate your entire tray of corm. So there you have it. Those are the 5 things that no matter what Alocasia I get, I will do. So I hope that you learned something. Comment down below if you do any of these. What else do you do besides that? Do you have any other different must-dos with your Alocasias? Please comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and YouTube thinks that this video is the next one and the best one for you.